Mineral Wells has its ghosts. Most people around here know to stay away from Miller's Pond. No fishing, no swimming, no midnight dares. They say the water's cursed, that it pulls people in. I never believed it until last week, until I saw her.
It began like any other call. A missing kid, just 12 years old, last seen riding his bike near the edge of town. His mother's voice trembled over the phone, her words tumbling out in panicked bursts. When I arrived, the sun was already dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the grass. The boy's bike lay abandoned, its front wheel still spinning, and his backpack was tossed nearby as if dropped in a hurry. At first, I tried to convince myself he'd just run off, maybe hiding from trouble, maybe playing a prank. But then I saw them, the drag marks, fresh and wet, etched into the mud, leading straight to the pond. A hush seemed to settle over the place, thick and unnatural. The pond was glassy, its surface undisturbed, reflecting the tangled branches above. But something about that stillness felt wrong. It was too perfect, too deliberate, as if the water was holding its breath, waiting. I crept closer, my boots sinking into the soft earth at the edge. The air was colder here, heavy with the scent of damp leaves and something else, something metallic and old. As I stood there, peering into the darkness beneath the water, a single ripple spread across the pond. It widened, slow and deliberate, as if something beneath the surface had stirred. The hair on my arms prickled. That's when I saw her. She rose from the depths with an eerie grace, her skin pale as moonlight, hair billowing out around her like a black halo. Her eyes were open, wide and unblinking. But there was nothing in them, no anger, no sorrow, just an endless, empty watchfulness. She hovered there, barely breaking the surface, her gaze fixed on me. I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat.
I fumbled for my radio, pressing the button with shaking fingers. Static crackled through the speaker, but it wasn't the usual kind. This was warped, distorted, like a dozen voices whispering all at once. Their words overlapped, rising and falling, just beyond comprehension. The sound made my skin crawl. I tried again, but the whispers only grew louder, swirling around me. When I tore my eyes from the pond and looked back, she was gone. The water was calm again, as if nothing had happened. I exhaled, my pulse racing. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, a soft, sloshing sound. I spun around. The boy stood there, soaked to the bone. His clothes clung to his small frame, water dripping from his hair. He looked up at me, eyes wide and wild, lips trembling. For a moment, he seemed almost translucent, as if the pond hadn't sung. Later that night, I looked through old reports. Turns out, a girl went missing at that pond in 1987. No body ever found. Locals said she drowned, but the autopsy never happened, because no one ever saw her again. Now she's taking others, pulling them under, choosing who stays, who returns. And the worst part, I think I'm next. There's something about islands that makes people vanish. Something old, something cold. Back in '84, I was stationed as a temporary responder on Windgrave Island, just off the Massachusetts coast. Small place, 800 people, and exactly 6 days of hell. It started with Margaret Lane, 23 years old, worked at the Lighthouse Cafe. She left work late one January night during a record-breaking cold front. Never made it home. Locals blamed the sea. She must have slipped, they said. The waves took her. But when we searched the shoreline, we found her footprints in the snow, clear, unbroken, leading from the cafe, through the dunes, then just stopped, like she'd been plucked from the earth. The fear that had slowly crept over the village now clung to every wall, every window, and every trembling breath. Each night, as darkness settled and the wind began its mournful wail, the people grew quieter, drawing close to their fires, whispering prayers to old gods they had long abandoned. Yet, the wind did not care for prayers. It swept through the streets, rattling doors and shutters, and when it finally retreated, someone else was missing. Over the next 3 nights, 5 more vanished. No one saw them leave, and nothing was left but the faint impression of footsteps pressed into the snow, always leading out to the open ice, and always ending abruptly, as if the night itself had swallowed them whole. There was never blood, never a sign of struggle, only silence, unnaturally deep, and an absence that seemed to echo through the village like a hollow bell. Rumors grew with every disappearance. Some spoke of wolves, others of madness brought on by the endless winter. But the old man who lived by the docks swore it was something else. He claimed, in a voice roughened by age and fear, to have seen a woman gliding across the snow, her dress as black as the midnight sea, her hair twisting and writhing like seaweed caught in the current. "She calls to them," he would whisper, his eyes darting to the window, watching for shadows that swirled just beyond the reach of firelight. "They hear her voice on the wind." Most dismissed his stories as the ramblings of a mind frayed by solitude, but deep down, everyone felt the truth in his words. There was something in the wind, a song so faint that it could be mistaken for memory, or longing, or fear. On the 6th night, the wind was fiercer than ever, rattling the radio tower where I kept watch at the edge of the island. The snow came down in thick, blinding sheets, and the sky pressed close, erasing the horizon. I paced the perimeter, boots crunching on the ice, flashlight beam trembling in my hand. The wind's howl was so loud it seemed to shake the bones of the island itself. And then, without warning, it stopped. In that instant, the world was silent. No wind, no snow, not even the distant creak of the radio tower's metal frame. The silence was absolute and unnatural, as if the world were holding its breath. That's when I heard it. A song, soft, almost carried away by the hush. It was an old lullaby, the kind mothers hum to soothe frightened children in the dark. The melody was sweet, but underneath, there was a pull, a sorrow so deep it made my chest ache. The song was coming from the trees, from the wind itself, from everywhere and nowhere at once. My feet moved before I could think, drawn to the music, flashlight cutting a thin line through the darkness. I stepped into the woods, branches clawing at my coat, heart beating in my throat. And then I saw her. A woman, floating above the snow, her dress long and black, hair swirling around her head like a living thing. Her face was pale and still, gray as moonlight. Her eyes were closed, and her lips never moved. But the lullaby continued, growing louder, curling through the trees like smoke. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The song wrapped around me, cold and sweet, promising peace, promising rest. I blinked, and she was gone. The woods were empty, the wind howling once more, and the snow swirling all around me. I looked down, half expecting to see my own footprints joining those of the vanished. But there were none, only undisturbed snow, and the lingering echo of a lullaby fading into the night. They shut down Windgrave that winter, blamed the disappearances on dangerous weather patterns. But the locals knew better. They say the island never wanted us there, and that something ancient, older than memory, still lives in the wind, and every now and then, when the cold cuts deep, it still sings.